morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Professor Ming's Strategic Insights. My name is Ming. Currently, I'm a professor emeritus of the Political Science Department, National Taiwan University. For the past 30-some years, I've been doing research and teaching courses in fields like PRC's domestic politics, PRC's foreign policy, international relations, cross-Taiwan Strait relations, and of course, foreign policies of the United States and the Soviet Union. The topic I'm going to share with you is the commotions surrounding Mr. Xi Jinping's recent mysterious disappearance from the public scene. Yes, Mr. Xi Jinping, the Secretary General of the Chinese Communist Party, the Chairman of the People's Republic of China, and the Chairperson of the Central Military Commission, Mr. Xi Jinping. He has disappeared from the public scene for 3 weeks, and that's unusual. But finally, he showed up only very recently. On August 19th in Beijing, he received Mr. Tong Lam, the Secretary General of Vietnam, who paid an official visit for the first time. So what do we mean by the mysterious disappearance from the public scene for 3 weeks on the part of Mr. Xi Jinping? That means he hasn't shown up in either the front page or the headline of the official media, such as People's Daily, New China News Agency, and China Central Television Station, and so on and so forth. We also noticed that his exposure rate, in the past, leaders like Communist China, they have great exposure rate in their official media. But this time, Xi Jinping disappeared, and for a longer period of time, and the exposure rate of himself has dropped to 25%. Yes, you heard me right. He misses about 75% of the regular exposure rate. And that's the first thing relating to that. And the second thing is about a week or so ago, the main official media, the People's Daily, they ran an article claiming that they should no longer practice personality cults, which is something very rarely seen for the past 12 or 13 years, ever since Xi Jinping came to power in the year of 2012. And also in mid-July, from July the 15th to the 18th last month, they held the third plenum of the 20th Party Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. About 2,000 people gathered in Beijing and held a great congress and so on and so forth. Usually after that, they will issue a communique, and people around China are asked to study this communique thoroughly, carefully, and even to the point of be able to memorize it. And of course, the army is the important unit that's asked to study the so-called the spirit. But this time, it's not reported, and that's unusual. Usually, that's a big news, almost hit the headline of the newspaper, saying how the army, the People's Liberation Army, learned the spirit of the third plenum, and so on and so forth. And also, it was not mentioned, or it hasn't been mentioned, that in the Public Security Department, they did not study this spirit of the so-called third plenum. At least it's not printed in a newspaper. And again, that's unusual. Another thing worth mentioning is Mr. Wang Xiaohong, the Minister of Public Security, or the head police of China, is closest protege of Mr. Xi Jinping. He visited Guizhou, one of the southern provinces in China, and he summoned his subordinate policemen, and he gave a lecture several thousand characters long. It was printed in full in the newspaper. The strange thing about his remarks, about his speech, is that he urged his subordinates to study this so-called the spirit of the third plenum carefully, thoroughly, and try to memorize them by heart. but Xi Jinping's name was never mentioned in anywhere in his speech and in his remarks. And that's very, very unusual, because Mr. Wang Xiaohong, like I said, is one of his closest political protege, and he mentions Xi Jinping all the time. Well, let me put it this way. He'll mention Xi Jinping in every 3 sentences, that's for sure. That's in the past. But this time he never mentioned Xi Jinping, and that's unusual. That happened on July the 24th, so long before the so-called mysterious disappearance of Xi Jinping from the public scene. But anyway, the question is, why is it so important? Why is Xi Jinping's disappearance so important? Well, we all know that Chinese communists pay much attention to propaganda. They learned it from Nazi Germany. And they knew that a lie, if you repeat it for 1,000 times, people will believe it's true. So they followed that obediently. Anyway, so they pay much attention to propaganda, like I said. And one of the key points in their propaganda is that they pay much attention to promote their top leader or top leaders. Well, in the case of China, they promote the top leader himself. And for Xi Jinping, they've been doing that for over 12 years, or 12, 13 years. So it's to the point of not just promotion of the top leader, but to the point of a personality cult, although there's something they dislike for quite some time. But anyway, it came back again. Let me show you how they promote Xi Jinping for an example. Suppose this is the front page of the People's Daily, their top official newspaper. Usually it's printed in 2 columns, top and bottom, or 3 columns, top, middle, or the bottom. The 3 columns or 2 columns. Any day of the newspaper you see from the People's Daily, you'll always see Xi Jinping here. His big smiling face here, either wave at the crowds, or he hug and kiss a little kid, or he talked to his cadres, or he received a foreign visitor like Prime Minister of Italy, Madame Meloni, or whoever, anyway. So it's always there, it's always him. So if he disappears from the headline or from the front page, that's really kind of unusual. That doesn't really happen. But anyway, we have more scientific proof to it. In Hong Kong University, back in 2022, a professor from the Hong Kong University who did a research. This professor who did a head count of Xi Jinping's missing from the headline or from the front page from year 2012 to 2018. The results are like this. In the year 2013, Xi Jinping's missing from the newspaper from the headline for 111 times, almost 1 of 3 days. So that's kind of unusual. But that was almost the first year when Xi Jinping came to power. The second year, the next year, in the year 2014, Xi Jinping misses 74 times. And in 2015, 97 times. 2016, 88 times. 2017, 73 times. 2018, 20 times. So you can see that there's a clear pattern to it. That means it's very important for the Chinese people or for people around the world to Xi Jinping appearing on the front page or in a headline, and that's for sure. So this time when he disappeared from the public scene for 3 weeks, or anyway, just after 7 days, people begin to get suspicious. So there are all kinds of speculations and rumors circulating here and there. We can basically categorize these rumors or speculations into 2 groups or 2 lines of arguments. The first line is, of course, about health. The second line is about political trouble. Let's deal with the health problem first. About this health problem thing, there are 4 versions of the story. The first version is Xi Jinping was dead. He passed away because of some serious sick illness or something. Anyway, he passed away. There was no substantial support to the argument, but it's a simple claim. But anyway, that's one of the rumors that circulated around. That's the first one. The second one is Xi Jinping has some kind of liver problem. We knew that for some time. And there are two versions to this liver problem. The first one is Xi Jinping had cirrhosis, and it did not say how bad it was, and that's the first version. The second version is much more serious. Not only he had this cirrhosis, it developed into a liver cancer, and it was so bad that he had to do a transplant, a surgery of liver transplant, and he survived the surgery, and he's recovering, and that's a second version. The third version is, of course, he has some kind of heart trouble. He had heart disease, and he had a heart attack, anyway, and he was recovering, and that's third version. The last version is he had a stroke. Actually, this may not be a rumor because he might have a stroke before, because a couple of years back we noticed that he disappeared from the public scene for a period of time again, and then he came back and to show himself, but people noticed that he talked slower than before, and he walked in a very strange way. He could barely move his left arm and things like that. So that's not unusual. But anyway, that's the kind of health problem associated with this kind of this disappearance thing. So the detailed thing about this story is that during this third plenum session, all of a sudden he got sick. It was very bad, and he was pulled out from the meeting room, and he was admitted to and hospitalized at the so-called wartime medical center, and an emergency team was set up to deal with the problem, and this team was comprised of Mr. Li Qiang, Premier of the state, and Mr. Wang Huning, the number 4 guy in the Standing Committee of the Politburo, and Cai Qi, the number 5 guy of the Standing Committee of Politburo. And of course, Mrs. Xi Jinping, Ms. Peng Liyuan, as the head of the team. When there's a major decision to make, they have to reach a consensus before the decision can be made. But Mrs. Xi, or Ms. Peng Liyuan, has the final say, and she has the decisive vote for this so-called major decision making. Okay, so much for the Xi Jinping's health problem. And the second line of speculations has to do with power struggle inside the Communist Party. And again, there are 4 versions of this power struggle argument. The first one is about the power struggle during the third plenum of the 20th Party Congress. It does not mention anything about Xi being sick or not. Anyway, it is said that some top generals from the PLA, from the People's Liberation Army, they gang up with some of the top Red family members. They gang up together and challenge Xi Jinping. They accuse Xi Jinping of mishandling the state affairs, things like economy, finance, or unemployment, diplomacy, and even military affairs. Xi Jinping messed it all up. So China is now caught in a dilemma, in a very awkward position, domestically and externally. So they want to challenge him. And it is even mentioned that these people, the military people and the top Red family members, they want to bring back Mr. Hu Chunhua, the former vice premier, and who was considered a mild and moderate reformer from the Youth League branch. Anyway, but he was expelled by, it was kind of expelled by Mr. Xi Jinping. But this time, strangely enough, Mr. Hu Chunhua, after being frozen for some time, he reappeared and sat right next to Xi Jinping during the third plenum. So that gave rise to that kind of speculation. Anyway, so that's the first version. The second version, again, is about Xi Jinping being sick. And Xi Jinping knows that he's so sick that probably he could no longer handle the state affairs anymore. So he summoned and advised that Mr. Ding Xuexiang be called upon and to replace him, or at least as a provisional leader for a period of time until they have the next major meeting and decide who's going to lead the party or what. Frankly speaking, Ding Xuexiang is not a bad choice. He's probably the youngest member of the Standing Committee of the Politburo. He's 61 years of age, and he has some local experience, and he's kind of stable, either in terms of his personal character and the way he handles things. So people kind of like him. So I think it's not a bad choice. Anyway, that's the second version of the theory. The third version is that Mr. Wen Jiabao, the former premier of the PRC, of People's Republic of China, the premier prior to Mr. Li Keqiang, the guy who died in the swimming pool last year. So that's kind of strange. And Wen Jiabao, again, is considered a very moderate and a very pragmatic reformer. So people liked him even until today. And that's the third version. Again, there's no substantive material to support all these rumors or speculations. But anyway, we hear that kind of things. And the last one, the last version is the most thrilling one. There was a quasi-coup d'etat engineered by General Zhang Youxia, Xi Jinping's right-hand man, one of his two deputy chairperson of the Central Military Commission. That's important. He's a 3-star general, and he's older than Xi Jinping. He's a veteran soldier, and he's a son of a veteran PLA general. So he's a senior, and he's popular in the PLA, in the army. Anyway, the story goes like this. Xi Jinping summoned General Zhang and asked him to retire, but Zhang refused. And he thought that Xi Jinping mishandled the state affair, and he launched this quasi-coup d'etat by, probably arrested Xi Jinping, or at least put Xi Jinping under house arrest or put under his custody. Then he summoned the previous 4 people, Li Qiang, Wang Huning, and Mrs. Xi, to establish this so-called emergency team. And he declared, General Zhang declared, he will not participate in this team. And all he does is he will provide security for this team and for the army, for the party, and for the state. Anyway, so no matter what, so this line of argument or this line of speculations focus on one thing: Xi Jinping has lost his political power. So these are two lines of speculations and rumors. Now the question is, this reappearance of Xi Jinping on August 19th in receiving Mr. Tom Lim from Vietnam has eliminated all the suspicion and all the speculations? Well, probably not. Let me provide you with some observations of mine. First, if you watch the videos provided by both the Chinese and the Vietnamese official television stations, you'll notice something. Although they were reviewing the parade and whatever, the army on the Chinese side, you'll notice that Xi Jinping walked very slowly. Of course, that's ceremonial situation. They should walk slowly. But he not only he walked slowly, he dragged his left foot a little bit, if you notice, if you watch closely. And his left arm barely moved. and in a very unnatural way. So that's first thing. Second thing is the CCTV, the Chinese Central TV station. They showed a short video of how Xi Jinping received Mr. Tom Lam in the People's Hall and how he gave his remarks and his speeches. Xi Jinping read his speech very, very slowly, and slowlier than before. And he hesitated and stopped from time to time, if you can read Chinese. And that's the second thing. The third thing is, strangely enough, although CCTV, the China Central TV station, they provide this short video of how they receive the Vietnamese visitors. There's no close-up shots, of either person. And there was only very, very few close-up shots inside the room. So that's really kind of suspicious. So some people argue that's not Xi Jinping himself. The guy who showed up was a double, a Xi Jinping double. I don't think so, or at least I should say I'm kind of skeptical about this argument. I have my own reservation. Well, in the past, but because Chinese politics is very intriguing and it's very unusual and very different from that of the democracies. So I have been wondering myself, could it be possible that Xi Jinping is plotting something behind the scene? That reminds me of Mao Zedong during the Cultural Revolution time. In 1966, Mao Zedong launched this Cultural Revolution to purge his political opponents like Liu Shaoqi and his followers. And at the beginning of the campaign, Mao Zedong disappeared from the scene, from the public scene, for many days, and he was plotting something. And we read the memoir from different people. They mentioned the same story anyway. So Xi Jinping could be doing the same thing. Yes, Xi Jinping might have some health problem, and he was hospitalized. And after a while, he got better, and somehow he noticed something. He noticed that there were some kind of rumors and speculations around, and pointing to one direction. They dislike him. They don't want him. So they have all kinds of rumors like the ones we mentioned earlier. So he thought that he might use the opportunity. Well, in Chinese, we call it 引蛇出洞. A rough translation is like to lure the snakes out of their burrows so that I can catch them and kill them. 引蛇出洞. So could Xi Jinping doing the same thing? That he hid himself behind the scene, and he showed all kinds of weaknesses politically and elsewhere. And then perhaps he asked his proteges to release some kind of signs, or so-called signs, or even rumors or speculations, so that to urge his political opponents to act and to show themselves, so that he could see and he could notice very clearly who the true opponents are and who the so-called the double-faced political figures are inside the party. And these are the people that Xi Jinping wants to get rid of. So we don't know yet. Anyway, so what I'm saying is, although Xi Jinping showed up again, but we don't know what the truth is. So there's all kinds of speculations. So before we conclude our discussion, let me raise one final question. Why are there so many rumors and speculations about the whole thing? Well, the obvious answer is it's tyranny. It's a totalitarian regime. So they block the news, and it's not transparent, so people speculate all the time. Well, yeah, that's one easy answer. And the next one is, of course, Xi Jinping did mishandle some of the policies, either domestically or externally. So the economy went bad, and the people is living a hard life, and unemployment rate is high, and all kinds of troubles come across. So all kinds of rumors and speculations, like I said, are pointing to one direction. People don't like him. People want him out. Yes, there's a reshuffle of the political figures, but they want to reshuffle the top figure. They want to reshuffle Xi Jinping himself. So that's what Xi Jinping really would worry about. And that's, I think, worth closer observation from time to time. But anyway, like I said, it's a totalitarian regime. It's not transparent. There are always all kinds of speculations if something unusual happened. And this is important. So let's keep watching. We'll share with you with the newest development inside China. And until next time, I'll see you next time.